My name is Jordan Syatt. I'm a strength coach, nutrition coach, fitness coach of nearly 20 years. And for the last 8 months, I've been running a personal experiment in which I've been using a GLP-1. If you've been following me for a while, you know that in 2019, I did an experiment in which I ate a Big Mac every single day for 30 days straight and I lost 7 pounds, just to show people that you can enjoy your favorite foods in moderation and still lose weight. And in 2020, I did an experiment where I tried the carnivore diet. In 2021, I did a ridiculous experiment in which I only drank coffee for 24 hours straight to show you that caffeine and coffee doesn't inherently dehydrate you. And in 2023, I did an experiment in which I wore a continuous glucose monitor and deliberately spiked my blood sugar every day for 30 days and lost 12 pounds to show you that spiking your blood sugar doesn't make you fat. Long story short, I do experiments on myself, partly so other people can learn, but also because I'm a coach. And when my clients are going through something, I will better be able to understand them and what they're going through if I've also been through it. So while I love to read and go through the research, I also like to put myself through the things my clients go through because that way I think I can be a better coach for them. And considering over 15 million adults in the United States alone are currently using GLP-1s, I figured I might as well try it so I can understand what it actually feels like to be on a GLP-1 so I can be a better coach. I didn't just want to take a GLP-1 and report on that, which is one of the reasons why I've waited so long to make this video. I wanted to spend a significant amount of time not just taking the GLP-1, but also not taking the GLP-1 so I can give you a more realistic view of what it's been like to be on and off. So initially, I did 4 months in which I was taking Tirzepatide. I started at a subclinical dose, so about 12.5 units per week, and over those 4 months, progressively titrated upwards to the lowest clinical dose of about 25 units per week. After those 4 months, I took 2 months off of Tirzepatide. I did this because I wanted to see what it felt like when I came off and to see if my hunger stayed the same or became even worse than before. After those 2 months going completely off of Tirzepatide, I got back on Tirzepatide, but this time I reduced my frequency from every week to every other week injections. So now I want to go over my results with you, and obviously we're going to discuss my weight loss and if I regained any of the weight once I went off or reduced the frequency of my Tirzepatide injections. But not just my weight loss, I also want to discuss with you the things that surprised me the most, how I felt, if I had any side effects, and what takeaways you might have if this is something you're looking into. So starting with how much weight I lost, in the first 4 months, I went from about 155 pounds to 140 pounds, which is obviously a 15-pound total weight loss, which translates to about 1 pound per week on average. Granted, I didn't have that much weight to lose to begin with, but considering people are told that GLP-1s make everything exponentially easier and often they're told that it's cheating, I think many people will be surprised to hear that it was only 1 pound per week. Now, in the subsequent 2 months, so from months 4 to month 6, this is when I stopped taking Tirzepatide. And in this time frame, my weight fluctuated from the low of 140 pounds up to about 142 or 143 pounds. And in the most recent 2 months, so from month 6 to month 8, in which I reintroduced Tirzepatide, but at a lower frequency, my weight has fluctuated between 140 pounds up to about 145 pounds. So all in all, over the last 8 months, it's been about a 10 to 15 pound weight loss. But my weight loss has only been a tiny part of my overall results. There are a number of things I'm really excited about, but one of the things I'm most excited about looking at my blood work is my ApoB. ApoB is a huge and important predictor of your overall heart health and your risk of cardiovascular issues, and my ApoB went from out of range to a very healthy range. My overall cholesterol improved, my blood pressure improved, my inflammation improved, and my testosterone even improved. Keep in mind, I'm not on testosterone or any other type of TRT, nor am I on any statins. I am taking blood pressure medication, but I've actually been able to reduce my blood pressure medication since going on Tirzepatide. I'm not saying that's a cause and effect, but I am saying that is definitely part of what's been happening over the last 8 months. So from a physical and physiological perspective, my body fat has gone down, my blood markers and overall health have improved, but what about my strength and performance in the gym? I want to bring this up because many people will say you should not go on a GLP-1 because you're going to lose muscle mass. Good news is they're wrong. Over the last 8 months, I've kept my protein intake high. I've made sure to eat sufficient calories, even though I haven't been as hungry, and I've still been strength training about 3 times per week. And in this time frame, my strength has dramatically improved. So not only has my body fat gone down, testosterone gone up, and overall blood markers and health improved, but my strength and muscle has improved as well. Granted, if If I didn't hit my protein consistently, if I wasn't strength training, then yes, I absolutely would have lost muscle mass and probably bone density as well. But because I made sure to emphasize my protein intake, my strength training, my sleep, and make sure that I was doing everything I knew I needed to do in addition to taking the GLP-1, everything else subsequently improved. But what about side effects? Because this is something we hear a lot about with GLP-1s, especially in the people who are trying to scare people away from even considering them. Now, obviously, every single person is different and everyone can respond differently, not to mention Tirzepatide is only one GLP-1 and there are many others to choose from. So this is only my experience. But for me, overall, the side effects were minimal at worst. In fact, the only time I ever experienced a negative side effect is when I came back on Tirzepatide after that 2-month layoff. See, when I first started Tirzepatide 8 months ago, I started with the subclinical dose of about 12.5 units. After about 4 weeks, I titrated up to about 25 units weekly. During this time frame, I had 0 negative side effects whatsoever. After taking 2 months off, though, I made a stupid mistake. Instead of titrating back up from 12.5 units to 25 units, I jumped right back into the 25 units. So for my first week back on Tirzepatide, jumping right back into 25 units, I had a lot of stomach distress. I had diarrhea, I had nausea, and just overall a lot of discomfort in my stomach, likely due to the delayed gastric emptying that comes from these drugs. After experiencing these negative side effects, I spoke to my provider at Merrick Health, and they told me that it was probably because I jumped right back into the higher dose instead of starting at the lower dose and then titrating back up again. So the following week, I reduced my dose back to the subclinical dose of about 12.5 units. The side effects went away immediately, and then over the course of the next 4 weeks, I titrated back up, and that was the only experience in which I had a negative side effect. Again, everyone is different and everyone's going to have different experiences, which is why you need to work with your providers and your medical team. But from my own personal experience, that was the only negative side effect, and it was minimal at worst. Now, before I get into my biggest takeaways and what was most surprising, I do want to take a minute to talk to you about what it felt like, especially from the hunger perspective, to be on Tirzepatide. When I first started taking it, my hunger went down dramatically and immediately. And it was at this moment that I realized how easy it would be for someone who has no nutritional knowledge to radically undereat their protein and risk muscle loss. Because if I didn't know what I was doing, it would be very easy for me to eat next to nothing and lose muscle by not eating sufficient protein. So for the first month or 2 months, I had to put a concerted effort into making sure I was getting at least 100 grams of protein a day, a lot of which was coming from shakes and powders. After the first 2 months though, even as I titrated up and increased my dose, I did notice my hunger starting to come back. So while the first 2 months my hunger was radically diminished, by months 3 and 4 my hunger had started to come back, so getting more protein and eating more calories as a whole was significantly easier. Now in the subsequent 2 months when I took off Tirzepatide completely, the first month my hunger stayed relatively stable. In the second month, this is when I noticed my hunger coming back a little bit more than usual, and I did start to notice myself starting to mindlessly snack more than I was before. What I think is most interesting to me about this phase though, even when my hunger increased slightly and I was noticing myself starting to mindlessly snack more than I was before, it was me noticing that I was mindlessly snacking and not doing it completely unaware. This was a wonderful learning experience for me though, because most people when they mindlessly snack, they're completely unaware of it. But because I hadn't been mindlessly snacking for the previous 4 months, I became acutely aware of when I started to reach for things even when I wasn't hungry, so I could get more control over my thoughts, more control over my actions, and even if I wasn't as hungry, I could get myself in, I could rein myself in to stop myself from overdoing it, whereas before, I probably wouldn't have even have thought about it. Now, in the most recent 2 months, so from month 6 to month 8, in which I've reduced my Tirzepatide frequency, my hunger has been very stable. I'm at a point now in which I don't feel overly full at all. There is 0 discomfort whatsoever, and I can comfortably eat 1,500 to 2,200 calories no problem on a day-to-day basis. At the same time, however, my desire for things like alcohol have gone down tremendously. And if I had to guess, looking at my blood work in which my inflammation improved, my cholesterol improved, and so many other markers improved, I would bet that the reduction in alcohol, simply because I haven't wanted it as much, played a huge role in my overall health improving. And considering more and more research is coming out now about how alcohol is not good for you in any amount, even though, quite frankly, I love drinking alcohol and I have wine with my wife several nights per week, just simply reducing my amount from about 3 glasses a night to maybe half a glass to 1 glass, I think has played a tremendous role in my health, and I think is something for people to consider, especially maybe they're not even struggling with their weight, but they are struggling with their relationship with alcohol. Again, don't make any decisions without speaking with your doctor, and don't take my advice at face value, but this is one of the most important things that I've realized over the last 8 months, seeing how much my alcohol consumption and desire for alcohol consumption has gone down without me needing to try. Now, at this point, I want to talk to you about what I consider to be my biggest takeaway from experimenting with a GLP-1 for the last 8 months. About a year ago, I made a YouTube video saying something to the effect of, if you only have about 15 pounds to lose, you probably shouldn't be taking a GLP-1. And at this point, I think I was completely wrong, and I'm going to explain why. When I made that video and I said that, I was coming from the perspective of thinking about GLP-1s purely as a weight loss medication. But as I've been not only using it myself, but researching it more and speaking with literally thousands of people who are also currently using it, I've realized GLP-1s are not just for weight loss. What I think is becoming more and more prevalent and more known is that GLP-1s can be a tremendous tool, and the key word there is can be a tremendous tool for some people to improve their relationship with food and especially reduce what is called as food noise. Now, if you've followed me for a while, you know I've been very open about my history with disordered eating, binge eating, anorexia, bulimia, notably stemming from my time as a competitive wrestler from 8 years old all the way to 18 years old, which then carried into my powerlifting career. Now, I'm 34 today and I haven't had a binge since I was about 21 years old, so it's been a very long time. But in the same way that an alcoholic who goes to Alcoholics Anonymous, they will often introduce themselves as like, hey, I'm so-and-so and I'm an alcoholic, even if they haven't had a drink in 20 or 30 years. Even though I haven't had a binge in well over a decade, I still very much relate to that, and I still have a lot of food noise, probably more than someone who hasn't ever struggled with binge eating or anorexia or bulimia. So what stood out to me the most when I first began the GLP-1 was how much my brain just quieted down around food. And again, I've been very fortunate because I have a very good relationship with food and I've been able to come so far from when I really struggled at my worst. But even for someone like me who has a relatively good relationship with food, just because I did struggle so many years prior, the quieting down, the slowing down, and the not thinking about food so much was a massive help in my quality of life. And the truth is, even if I didn't lose any weight, even if I stayed right where I was, because again, I didn't need to lose weight, but if I just had fewer thoughts around food, I wasn't thinking about it as much, it wasn't taking up as much headspace, that in and of itself would have been worth the quality of life that comes from taking the GLP-1. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so excited to make and release this video, because while a year ago I said, if you only have 10, 15, 20 pounds to lose, then you don't need to be taking a GLP-1, I now disagree with that statement because I think it requires more nuance and more understanding of what these drugs can be used for. Now, initially these drugs were used to help treat diabetes, specifically type 2 diabetes, and to help people with weight loss. But just because that's what they initially came out for doesn't mean there aren't other things that they can improve down the road as we learn more about them. Even with very common drugs like aspirin, for example, when it initially came out, it was used to help with pain management. But as time has gone on and as we've studied it more, we've realized that the blood thinning effects can help some people reduce the risk of heart attack and reduce the risk of many cardiovascular issues. Point being that just because when a medication came out, it was initially used for one thing, doesn't mean we can't find other uses for it down the road. And in my opinion, looking at the research and finally experiencing a GLP-1, also coming from a history of disordered eating, I'm very excited to see how GLP-1s can help people with things like alcoholism, smoking, and other issues of the sort. So there are two more things I want to discuss before we end this video. The first being, is a GLP-1 right for you? And the second thing is strength training. So make sure you watch all the way to the end. When it comes to whether or not a GLP-1 is right for you, the only people who can decide that are you and your medical provider. So at this point in my career, I personally don't feel comfortable saying this is who should use it and this is who shouldn't use it, because it's a very personal decision that needs to be made between you and your doctor. With that being said, what I do want to say is don't let what other people might think influence your decision. If you and your doctor think that trying a GLP-1 could be helpful for you, then maybe that's an option worth exploring. If you and your doctor don't think a GLP-1 is right for you, that's also fine, and you shouldn't feel pressured to take one. My concern is, in the context with which I'm coming from this, is I get hundreds, sometimes thousands of messages every month from people who are currently taking GLP-1s, but they're doing it in secret. They don't tell their friends, they don't tell their spouses, they don't tell anyone close to them because they think and or know they're going to be judged for it. And if there are people who are doing this in secret, then I know there are people who are not doing it out of a fear of judgment. Now keep in mind, and again, I'm not blindly encouraging you or anyone to take GLP-1s, because just like with every medication, there are pros and cons and there are risks involved in everything, which is why you need to have a clear and honest conversation with your doctor and maybe multiple doctors about what is the best choice for you. I just just don't want someone to miss out on taking a medication that could help improve their health and their life and their performance and how they're feeling simply because they have a fear of judgment from others in their life. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is strength training, because as I said and alluded to earlier in this video, if you are taking a GLP-1 and you are not strength training, you are making a massive mistake. Not only are you going to be losing muscle mass, you're also going to be losing bone density, which is already an issue for people, especially for women, but men too, as they get older and older. And if you are losing muscle mass at an accelerated rate and you are losing bone density at an accelerated rate, even if you're losing body fat, you are radically increasing your chances of having a catastrophic event and dying much earlier. With that being said, I'm getting a lot of messages from people who are taking GLP-1s and they aren't strength training because they have no idea where to begin. So if you're taking a GLP-1 or if you're thinking about taking a GLP-1, but you don't know where to begin with your strength training, I've got you covered. I have created a completely free guide to strength training for GLP-1 users. So if you're using a GLP-1 or you're thinking about using a GLP-1, but you aren't sure how to strength train or where to begin, not only does this guide show you what you'll need and how to strength train, but I also provide you with sample strength training programs that you can start using today. Regardless of how much gym equipment you have access to, whether it's only a couple of dumbbells or a massive gym filled with equipment, in this guide, I'm going to show you exactly everything you need to know to strength train effectively to increase your muscle mass, increase your bone density, get stronger, improve your performance, all while using a GLP-1. So if you want to get this free guide to strength training for GLP-1 users, I have a link in the description of this video. All you have to do is tap the link, put your first name and your best email in there, and I will send you a direct link to the free guide to strength training for GLP-1 users within the next couple of minutes. Having said all of that, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you don't already. If you have any questions about GLP-1s or strength training or about my own personal experience with a GLP-1, feel free to leave them in the comments, and make sure you subscribe to my channel and watch my podcast. I'm putting out new podcasts every single week, every single Wednesday here on YouTube. If you have any questions, let me know. Have a wonderful week. I'll talk to you soon.